Greetings, family. This is Kyle Dixon, co-founder of Precise Minds Filmworks, educator for 20 plus years, cultural enthusiast.
And I'm Kayode Bentley, president and founder of 4T's Teaching Teens to Think, whose mission is to help inner city youth identify their inherent skill sets in order to complete their education, establish a career, and ultimately start a business if they choose to. Professor at Fordham University, where I teach students who are pursuing their master's degree in social justice.
And with that said, welcome to the Grand Rising Collective, a podcast whose purpose is to cultivate greatness and excellence within ourselves and our communities. The name itself is from the morning greeting of Grand Rising, which we interpret as starting off the day with a greatness mindset so that we are able to rise to the occasion of whatever obstacles and challenges we may face.
And that's why we focus on engagement, relevant information, and empowerment for people in our communities who want to be and do better in their daily lives.
Welcome to the Grand Rising Collective. Greetings, family. Greetings, family. Welcome to another edition, another episode of the Grand Rise Collective podcast. You have now entered a space, right, where you're dealing with the best, the brightest, and the boldest, all right, of those people that we involve into our platform. So welcome. If you haven't been informed of what our podcast is and our platform, definitely like, share, subscribe. And we're about empowering, we're about enlightening, we're about educating, and also entertaining. We have fun here too as well. But definitely make sure, if you're not familiar with us, again, remember, like, share, subscribe. So without further ado, this is another episode with myself, Kyle Dixon, and my co-host, my partner in podcast, Kayode Bentley. Kayode, say what's up to the people.
What's up to the people? Family. Got you. What's up?
So on our podcast, we're professionals. We're in the educational, entrepreneurial, tech, right, wellness space. All right, we do a lot of different topics, and we have a special guest, a good friend, colleague of ours, Mr. Kenneth Muigai, a professional, an educator, a scholar, a world traveler. I mean, the brother's got a lot going on, y'all. Father, husband, so a lot of things going on. Welcome, Kenneth. How you doing, sir?
Hey, what's up, y'all? A pleasure. Happy to be here. Happy to just connect with you all and share some upliftment and and keep us moving forward. So I'm excited, looking forward to today in our conversation.
Awesome.
So today, fam, we're going to talk about a few things specifically. Technology in general, but definitely NFTs, right? Non-fungible tokens, right? That's been a big topic, for the past year and a half since we entered COVID and hopefully coming out of COVID. And Kenneth is definitely in that space real heavy. He's been involved in creating his own NFTs, which we'll definitely get into. And we'll definitely also get into him as an educator and world traveler as well, because that ties into when we talk about upliftment of the community, upliftment of people of color, as they say, Black and brown folk, and also how we can use this tech to help benefit us going forward. Because some people see it as a scam, some people see it as, it's fugazi, it's not real, it's a flash in the pan of life. It's just come in and it's a trend and it's gone the next. But we're here to talk about how we can really use this newfound usage of tech and take advantage of it early, right? Be early adopters. So, Ken, man, give the people and tell our family, man, who are you? I know you're a New Yorker, born and bred. So, definitely talk about just growing up in New York, I believe Harlem, and just how that led you into being an educator in that space.
Yeah, for sure. So, hello, everyone. My name is Kenneth Muigai. My last name is a Kenyan last name. Both of my parents were born and raised in Kenya. Ethnically, or my ethnic tribal affiliation in Kenya is Kikuyu, which is a large ethnic group in Kenya. My parents and many of my family members, aunts, uncles speak native Kikuyu language. I do not speak the language. I was born and raised first generation in the United States, born and raised specifically in New York City, grew up in Harlem. I could see Harlem Hospital from my apartment building. I could see Yankee Stadium from a distance. So, always kind of been a Yankees fan just because of that. I could see the lights on when the games were on. I'm the oldest of three siblings. And for much of my life, I was raised just by my mom. My father was with us, and he ended up being deported when I was about 8 or 9 years old. So for much of my middle school, teenage life and beyond, it's been mom holding it down, raising myself, my two younger siblings. So currently, my sister is a professor at Brandeis University in the fields of history of science and African American studies. And my brother works for a tech company here in New York, but he travels as well. And I'm a teacher. I have so growing up in Harlem, first of all, my mom, prioritized education for us. Part of it, I think, was her passion and her, the value that she placed on school learning, and the path that she believed is there for us. So with that came a lot of, just mom being on me. Like I couldn't be out there, like hanging out, certain times. She encouraged me to get involved, whether it was sports, after school activities. My mom really did sacrifice a lot, and I ended up taking a job really early when I was young, just working at a camp counselor, paying for, my clothes, things like that. Just kind of, taking a little bit of that stress off of mom, but also finding pride in that. So that was always great. But I had a great network of family that was close ever since my dad left. So, I give a lot of love and to my aunts, my uncles, particularly on my mother's side, because they were the closest ones to us, who really were like moms and dads to me and my younger siblings. They took us on the weekends, times we were on vacation from school, but my mom had to work. They would take us in, for a time period. And, I think as I get older, as a parent now, I think about, it wasn't always just my mom, right? It was other people in the community that were helping to raise us. So, being a Kenyan American, in New York, in Harlem, I saw myself as Black, but I also knew that people saw me as a little different. And growing up in Harlem, I didn't always find pride in my own identity as being a Kenyan American, being whether you want to talk about colorism or culture, it wasn't until much later, and I think part of that is structural. We can get really deep into identity, but one thing I've been seeing a lot more is just a lot more pride in identity, Black identity, African identity. All of that makes us who we are, makes us amazing, makes us powerful, makes us creative, makes us just incredible creations. Definitely embracing that and trying to pass that same energy on to others who don't really see representations in media, in business, in tech, in wherever it is. You can't be what you can't see. So growing up in Harlem, I played ball. I played, I was a student athlete in school, but I always enjoyed, one of my favorite things to do, just go out and play ball. And that was one way I was able to connect, but get a little respect from people in the neighborhood. Even though I wasn't, doing certain things, I still felt, part of, part of the community. And Harlem has definitely been changing, but my mom is still there. So I love, it's just kind of going down and seeing how things are changing, but also what's the same. And that's a bit about me. You did ask about me being an educator. So coming up, I didn't always know I was going to go into teaching. Um, I was, for a while, my mind was kind of set on medicine and then law. And it wasn't until like my sophomore year of college that a professor reached out to me. I attended Dartmouth College in New Hampshire, small school, relatively speaking, compared to so many other colleges and universities, about 4,000 students. But what was really cool about my sophomore year at Dartmouth was all the sophomores stayed on campus during that summer. You know, freshmen, juniors, seniors, they all went home, but sophomores stayed on campus. And that allowed the sophomore class to connect, you know, form strong bonds, network, et cetera, and just feel like the campus was ours, you know, especially after having a year of kind of the college life and experience under our belts. So during that summer, there was a posting that went out to undergrads asking for mentors to participate in a kind of a mentoring program. So Dartmouth was inviting students, high school students from around the country, from underserved, under-resourced communities, to take some college classes and just kind of be on campus for, you know, a few weeks, you know, a month, experience the college life. And, you know, having already done some work, you know, as a camp counselor, you know, tutoring, you know, I was kind of already, my heart and my service was kind of already geared towards giving back in that way. So I signed up for it. At the time, I was very active on my college campus. I was a charter member for a spoken word poetry group at Dartmouth. A college roommate and I had been doing daily comic strips in our college newspaper. So that was, you know, that was really exciting. And I was also volunteering as a, you know, with a particular organization that was bringing students or children of color onto the campus, and we would go to the museum, go to basketball games. A lot of those children were adopted. So we'd have some really dope events like hair days. You know, like we'd have members of, you know, the ladies, you know, come and braid hair, the fellas come and cut, you know, and we talked about, you know, self-care, you know, moisturizing, things that some families may not even really be aware of are that we need. You know, you can't be going out there looking, you know, a certain way. So but that was right. And what was great was a lot of those families were really receptive to that support, to that love, to that to what we were bringing to their children, that identity. So like there were times I went and, you know, with another classmate of mine, we would go and just support one, you know, just show love and go to a soccer game for one of the kids that used to come to our program. But that was one particular thing I was involved in. But during that sophomore summer, I signed up for this mentoring, you know, this mentoring opportunity. And I was assigned, you know, to work with the student, you know, show them around campus. And I really loved it. And I think sometimes when you're really passionate about things, you know, you never know who's watching, who sees that. And I happened to find myself in a situation where I was walking down the sidewalk, and the chair of the education department at Dartmouth, who was running that particular program, was walking towards me. He stopped me, and he said that he wanted to see me in his office like the next day, whatever, the next afternoon. I was like, oh, this sounds like a cool conversation that could happen. I wasn't sure what he wanted to talk about. So, you know, scheduled that. Next day I went to his office. He sat me down and he asked me to tell him about me. And no one ever really sat me down like that at college. Like I was getting the sense that he genuinely wanted to know who I was, not just why I was here, what I was studying, but who are you? Like, tell me about your family, right? Tell me about where you grew up. What are your interests? He did mention that he saw me kind of, you know, doing this mentoring thing, and, you know, appreciated the time I was giving. You know, we brought some spoken word poetry events to the program that summer. And this professor sat me down that day and was like, look, there are opportunities in education for you if you are interested. I see you have the potential to be a great teacher, and no one had said that to me before. And I was very moved to be honest. He told me about some fellowships that I could apply for. He told me about an opportunity to travel abroad while I was at Dartmouth in college to the Republic of the Marshall Islands, a small cluster of islands in the middle of the Pacific. He was, for the first time, but for the first time, I felt like someone was opening up a book of opportunities for me, like as clear as day, right? Not me navigating, asking questions, but he's saying, these are the opportunities for you, right? This is something you can have if you want. That to me was like a blessing. It was encouraging. I left that office feeling like walking a little straighter, feeling like I had purpose. And not many people wake up every morning feeling like they have purpose, that they have a destiny, or they have something that they can reach for. So it showed me the power of reaching out to others, extending a hand, opening up opportunities for them. And that really was the beginning of my path into education. I was able to travel out to the Pacific for a year, which was crazy. I was out on an outer island. There was, a plane that landed on my island every 2 weeks or a month. Only one car that belonged to the school I was teaching on. The students came from other islands onto my island to attend this boarding school. But it was a really incredible experience, and I could talk about it for days, just kind of whether it was laying down on the grassy airstrip, at night, and you could see, it felt like I was in a snow globe looking at the constellations in the sky, seeing shooting stars and just being in the middle of the Pacific and learning about the history of that island and picking up the language, playing the ukulele, playing basketball, people asking me about, my culture. I remember going out there and I was like, I'm going to look fly out there. I'm going to bring all my kicks. I'm going to bring the J's. Right. I packed so many clothes because that was part of that. That's how I expressed myself. Yeah. And when I was out there, as I was getting ready to return back to New York, back to Harlem, some students will come up to me. He's like, "Hey, Mr. M, I like those sneakers." And out there, when people would give you a compliment about a particular material object, that was their way of asking you to give it to them. Mm. And I was already made aware of that. And I remember there was a student that liked to, I think it was, I don't remember what it was, a pair of Nikes I had. He was, I had a nice relationship with him, and he made that comment. He's like, "I love your sneakers." And I knew I had to give them. I knew I needed to give them to him. And I remember after I gave him those, I started giving away more of my other things. And I realized I came to this island carrying things with me, feeling like that was my identity. But I left materially lighter, but feeling more uplifted. Oh. And that was, I don't know if I would have had that understanding had I not been able to even travel out there and go experience a completely new world and new culture in an open-minded way. So that was just really incredible. And if there are any Marshallese people who are tuning into this podcast right now, Grand Rising, Yahweh Alap, it means hello. Yahweh means hello everyone. So that was that. I came back to Harlem, worked with the Harlem Children's Zone for a bit, and then I was accepted into the New York City Teaching Fellows Program and began teaching in New York public schools as a special education teacher. And I'm currently teaching in Westchester at this current time. So I'll land my plane on that and pass the rock.
Wow. Hold on, before we go to family, did you just hear this man's story? Did you hear this brother's story? Right? Amazing. That's why we have people on this platform. You never know someone's story. That's an amazing story, my brother. and just the whole layout, man, how one led to the next Oh man, man. What island is this? I need to put that on my list.
Yeah.
I need to put that on my
Republic of the
list.
Marshall Islands.
Okay.
Now, that just quickly, for anyone who doesn't know, so the Marshall Islands is about it's about a 3 or 4 hour flight from Hawaii, Northern Pacific Island. I think it's something crazy, like the elevation on those islands, the height, like the highest point is around 10 feet above sea level. Okay. When you go out, the New York Times did a piece maybe about 10 years ago. Anyone can Google it, about, if you just Google like New York Times Marshall Islands, the New York Times did a piece with aerial drone footage showing, and I'm not trying to get political here, but showing the impact of rising sea levels. You go out there, you speak to the people there who've been living on these islands for generations, they'll tell you what they see. They'll tell you that this property used to extend out here, right? But now in low tide, even in low tide, it only goes so far. Wow. The waves washing over the islands, the people that are out there that are in a lot of those islands stretching across the Pacific are some of the loudest advocates for, environmental equity and change, but they don't have the biggest seats at the table. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well. So I appreciate the time just to even share that.
Thank you.
No, definitely, man. Definitely. Yeah. That needs to be said, because as we go into, as Kayode, we ask our questions to have this discussion around technology. That's part of that whole environmentalist, the ecosystem, the resource we use in order to infect the environment. So no, thank you for saying that.
Thank you, Ken. A couple of things. I connect with you in regards to the last name, Muigai. Is that correct?
Yes.
Fantastic. I connect with you because my name is Kayode. My middle name, I'm not gonna say it. No, I'm playing. My middle name is Balagoon, and my last name is Bentley. And when you said that, that's your last name is Kenyan origin, but you were born and raised here in the United States, I resonate with that, because my name is Nigerian, from the motherland of Africa, but I was born and raised here in the United States. And, my dad named me and did the research and all that. But I found that connection there, how you could be born and raised in a state where your name doesn't derive from. And that gives you a different point of reference perspective as you're hearing how people interact with you. And a lot of their interaction is usually based on appearance, first sight, but it's also your name. So even though they don't get to see you, they look at your name and they already have an image or, an idea of who you may be or whatever the case would be. So I just wanted to throw that out there to say it's great to have to notice that we share that experience. The other thing you mentioned is that your father was deported when you were 8 years old, if I'm not mistaken, correct? I know how big of an impact my dad, I call him Pop, Cal educated me and called him Baba Bentley. Yeah, so, I appreciate that. Yeah, Baba Bentley. So my question to you is, I know how much of an impact my dad has had on me growing up, and I've heard how your mother and your aunts and your family has had to fill that void that your dad would usually, fill. Have you seen your dad lately or recently? Have you visited him? Spoken to what does that look like? And then I'm gonna follow it up, Cal, with another final question, and then we'll continue on from there.
First of all, Kayode, I love your name, man. Do you know what it means? I don't know what it means. Do you know does your name have a meaning, and what does it mean?
Kayode means one who brings joy, and Balagoon means warlord.
That's incredible. That's dope. I love that. We Africans, and we don't often get to praise each other's names, but that's an incredible name, and your parents definitely gave it that name aptly. You are definitely bringing joy right now and on a warpath to make that happen.
Thank you. Before you answer that question, what does your name mean? Forgive me for forgetting to ask you that.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I have no idea what my last name means, but I'll see if I can find out. I know what Kenneth means, but not Muigai. But but I do appreciate you asking about my father. I have seen my father. So the first time after he was deported, I was about 8 or 9 years old. The next time I saw him, I was about 16 years old. And what had been arranged was a family trip. My father, his life was kind of changing. He was kind of settled in Nairobi. His brothers, sisters were there. My father's father was there. He has a shop in downtown Nairobi, but my father was able to coordinate a trip for my mother, brother, sister, and I to travel out there. A big family trip. So it was first time seeing my father in 8 years. I'm a teenager, hormonal, my own things, whatever. And it was very emotional seeing my dad. Definitely broke down. Just hearing my father's voice, hugging my father. I'm sure many people could probably imagine what that's like. But he did an amazing job just kind of introducing Kenya to my brother, sister, and I. So we got to visit my mother's mother's farm, right, where there's cattle and chickens and goats and avocado trees and sugar cane, and we got to visit my father's place, and he was building his own house. Got to go to City Market, where my grandfather had a shop where he sold, like goods, bracelets and jewelry and, like souvenirs and things like that. Got to eat Kenyan food and travel to everything, and got to go on safari. We got to go and have just a mind-blowing experience. We got to travel to Mombasa, and that was just a very powerful moment for me, because I started to understand what home meant for my parents, and what home also means for me. Yes, it's Harlem, but there are deep, deep roots in Kenya for me. So to this day, still connect and I chat with my father on WhatsApp. I was just connecting with him the other day. I've gotten a chance to go back out to Kenya as well. And right now, the hope, the prayer, all that right now is, being able to travel out there with my wife and my daughters, so they could see my father for the first time, so he could see them, so they can also know what Kenya means for themselves and for our family, passing that down. That to me is, that's something I'm looking forward to. So yeah, my dad is out there. He's, he's doing well. I have family that travel back and forth. They kind of send me back messages, and I'm able to today, the global world is a local world, right? So my mom used to send me, to the bodega, to the store to get the calling cards long time ago, and you scratch the number off at the end and call. You have 15 minutes to call, and these days it's so much more. It's much easier. But now I appreciate the question about my father. He certainly is. He's not. He's involved as much as he can be. And I definitely have a lot of love and respect for my father for that. So appreciate the question.
And we talk about our culture, the legacy, right? We talk about the storytelling. That's how we have our history as our culture. And we've been so brainwashed and deprogrammed in this Western civilization, we don't realize the power and the impact of communication, because our ancestors were our history books when we were growing up in our motherland, and that's what made the culture and strengthened the culture. And I'm saying that to say, for our listening audience, it's important that you realize the impact that male figures have in the home, whether they're there physically, the father image in and of itself. And I think that's a pertinent question to ask everybody, their guests, about, your ancestors, about your parents, about your mothers, to see what kind of instruction or guidance that they've given you. Because one of the things you shared with me, Kenneth, as well, was when you were in college, the principal sat down and said, you have a world of opportunities that I want to share with you, which led you to that island. Well, it's the same thing that we get from our ancestors. They give us opportunities in different ways and having us realize and connect our trait and genes to why we do certain things. There are a lot of people who don't
who never met their mother or their father. And when they get older, that's their biggest priority and biggest request, to find out who is their parents, because there's a missing piece in their life. So I just want our listening audience to understand the impact of that question, as well as the impact to that answer, and how that connection made, and how it filled you in some kind of way, and how it helped you develop, and being that father that you are now with your daughters, and, keeping that lineage strong and going. So I hope our audience got that. It's the best way I can explain it. But to the final question, and I'll leave it over to you, Cal. You said at Dartmouth College, all the sophomores stayed on campus for the summer, right? So I wanted to ask, the group that stayed on campus, was it all Black? Was it mixture? Because Dartmouth College is a PW, right? It's a PWC, Cal, not a
HWCU, Historically White College University.
Right, HWC, right? So Cal has been sharing with me how important HBCUs are to our culture, how it's nurturing, right? And we talk about the PWIs or PWH, yeah, you know what you just said, Cal.
HWCUs.
HWC. So my question to you, Kenneth, is the sophomore group that stayed that summer doing that mentoring program, which opened the door that changed your life, were they all Black? Were they mixture? And what kind of impact did that have, in those two dynamics, whichever one it was? And then Cal, I'll leave the floor from you. But Kenneth, yeah, that's
yes, it. Yeah. So the entire sophomore class stayed on campus. It was a mixture, racially, like every admitted student who was there that second year was on campus. And I had a pretty diverse kind of social group, but the heart of my group was really Black and brown, peers and students. We were able to connect on, just whether, we were just able to connect, whether it's interest in, music, sports. We took some classes together, we just gravitated towards each other. So for much of my time at Dartmouth, I stayed, Dartmouth, I felt did a pretty good job providing space for diverse and different, just various groups of students on campus. So there was affinity housing that was provided. So I stayed at the El Hajj El Malik El Shabazz Affinity House for most of my time out there. We had a lot of Black-centric events and organizations that came through. We called it the AM, the African American House, right there. So, man, my junior, I remember seeing Obama came when he was running for his first year. And he had a glow that day. I remember that. Majority of my a good number of my peer group were brothers and sisters that were like me. Now, during that summer, there was one student in particular who did not stay on campus, and this was it was tragic, but a good friend at the time chose to go back out to the Bay. She was from California, and she ended up getting killed, shot that summer. When we being her peer group, we met in the lounge of the El Hajj El Malik El Shabazz Affinity House there. The news was shared, and many of us, we broke down. We wept. Her name was Malaya Willis Starbuck, and Dartmouth stepped up, and they flew us out there to attend the services, to spend time with the family. Malaya loved the Bay. She loved her friends that were there. One of her wishes was that her friends would go out there. Unfortunately, it was in those circumstances. So I think even, the college saw that need to mourn, to come together as community. And I felt that, they stepped up in a way that was very appropriate, and it meant a lot for us at the time and for the family. So that summer was a profound, kind of filled with a lot of different experiences. But it was definitely a time where I was able to connect with my classmates in a dynamic and profound way.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, brother. And those are the dynamics that we talk about as far as, schools and peer groups and being a part of different diverse, mixture of people from different parts of the world and be able to share that experience. That's the beauty of college. That's why it's one of the best times of my life, because I went to a HBCU, historically Black College University, Fisk University. And even though it was majority Black, probably like 99.9%, and we were all from different places. But again, you having a Black experience, quote unquote, at Dartmouth, and having those access to those resources and that dynamic on that campus is also treasured as well. So, when we talk about, I would love for all of our students to go to HBCUs, of course, because I'm biased. That's my bias. But, I know that there are also other experiences that we need to have in order to diversify and be able to share those and have access to resources, but also just have different experiences, just be able to like expand our minds. And that takes different experiences for different people, at different times. So, yeah, so no, thank you for sharing that, brother. Because and that's beautiful that Dartmouth flew you all out to the sisters' homegoing service to be able to share that experience and offer your condolences to family and mourn together, man, and community. That's beautiful, man. I definitely don't know the sister, but I definitely wish her family, a late condolence. But just to be able for you all to do that with her family, man, that's beauty right there.
Yeah.
And that ties into my next question as well. When we talk about connecting, right? Because we're talking about like communal as far as voice to voice, physical presence. But when we talk about education and we talk about technology, a lot of times those are social dynamics, right? Tech is, it has its, I guess it's physical, not physical, but more so task-oriented functionality. But it also has connectivity, social aspect of it, as well as education. How has that, because you even talked about even with your dad's being deported, having to go to the store, get the card, right. And now you're able to do WhatsApp. Now we're able to do WhatsApp and other things. How has that influenced you as far as not only your family dynamic, but also you being an educator? Be able to connect more.
Yeah. So technology. So when I think technology, I think of kind of a couple, I classify it in a couple different ways. There's kind of the functional stuff we use to get the job done, right? Whether it's email, cell phone, whatever access, that sort of stuff, exists. And then there's what some might call kind of Web 2 social media, and that kind of high speed velocity of like being able to connect with people quickly, globally. When I was in college, Facebook had started, and and at the time, small group of colleges were kind of testing it out and using it, and I was one of them my freshman year. And I was on there like, sometimes 3 hours a day, like scrolling mindlessly, looking at people's pictures, and then I deactivate my account and then reactivate it. But it was probably like maybe my sophomore year or junior year. I don't remember which one it was, where I actually, I stopped. I completely cut it off. I overcame those temptations to go back and, haven't looked back, because I just knew it was not helping me productively. So it took me a long time to get back into social media. And I got back into it, not so much for the flexes, for remembering people's birthday, but for building a network and for more kind of, if you want to call it, more business things. Okay. So using technology as a tool for my own personal and community upliftment and development. I think of, as a teacher, I see, technology such as cell phones and screens, et cetera, as a blessing and a curse at times, so, there are benefits to being able to provide students with access to resources that they otherwise may not have. There's still inequity. We saw it during COVID, where there were communities that and families that just did not have internet access, right? For a number of different reasons, whether it's kind of socioeconomically, people lost jobs, a lot, like real life challenges, right? I had students who couldn't turn in assignments because they did not have Wi-Fi. So what did we see? We saw school districts around the country stepping up, connecting with internet service providers, and realizing, all right, this is not the time to get greedy. We need to help people. People are hurting, right? So, so that was, we saw some social good in a sense happen that way. And then, but then I also see, a side of technology where you have big companies who have algorithms that are designed to take people's time from them, right? And how we use them, right? So whether we're scrolling on certain apps or watching certain videos, sometimes I'll tell my students, if they're looking for a picture for a project, I'll say, don't get sucked into the Google image vortex, looking for that one image. You can just keep scrolling,
right.
You're trying to find that right one. But it is, it is consuming a lot of our time. A cell phone is a toy, but it could be a tool. And once I realized that this can be a tool for me, once I was awakened to that, it changed the game for me. Because now I started to realize that with my waking hours, or with the time that I have, I can be thinking about and moving towards building generational wealth, passing on information to others in a profound way. And I know when we talk about technology, there's so many different ways we can go in terms of speaking about it. Like this just happens to be the direction I was kind of thinking of when you brought that up, Kyle. But it, yes, it does connect, and people are able to network and communicate. At the same time, it could be used in nefarious ways. I teach in a middle school, and we have to tell students, don't film that fight. Put the cell phones away, right? They're going home. They're not getting homework done because they're on Snapchat. They're on IG. They're playing a video game, and so being able. So we have to, as even adults, have to think about what are some just kind of executive functioning strategies that can help us in this time where it's so easy to get distracted. It's so easy to lose a large chunk of time in a day. What are the strategies that can help us focus on getting the work done? And playing now, working now and then playing later. So there are, we have to just think a little bit differently in terms of how we organize ourselves and manage our time so that we can also be building and be productive individuals.
What's one way that we can begin to have less distraction, especially with our students? Because like I said, with COVID happened, we found that a lot of communities, especially communities of color, had lack of internet service, lack of access to stable internet connection. So therefore, assignments lagged, and people talk about, the COVID lack, in these things. But you as an educator, being in the trenches, as we say, what was, I guess, one thing that was a huge problem in connection with the internet, having lack of access to proper internet service, and also maybe a solution for parents? Because I know a lot of times parents, they want their children to take advantage of things, and we want our children to succeed. So what was something you saw in both of those?
So like during the pandemic in particular,
yes.
So most teachers who were teaching during COVID were not trained to teach virtually, right? So that was a learning curve for many teachers.
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm a teacher now, I have to understand, okay, there's this thing called Zoom. Okay. Now I have to learn how to utilize breakout rooms. Okay. So with that, there were certain things I was not able to do that I could do in a classroom, such as constant informal assessment. Right. So for anyone who's listening right now, just because a teacher may not be at your desk or just checking over your table doesn't mean that they're not checking to see if you are, how you're doing. We're constantly assessing to see, are my students understanding what I'm asking them to do with this particular task? Are they grasping the objective? Is anyone confused? Right. So
body language.
Right.
Yeah.
So now, and me speaking in particular from my role, I was a middle, I've been teaching in the middle school, so 7th, 8th grade, already developmentally, if you're a middle school kid, you don't want your face on a screen in front of everybody else. So now I'm seeing, my kids have hoods like this, maybe the screen is off. I don't know if they're getting the assignment done, right? I don't know. I had a student last year. This was hilarious. It was, I had the group on Zoom, and the student had headphones on, obviously, or he had headphones to listen. And I kept seeing this glare coming, from it, and his eyes kept going like this. I could see, you see where my thumbs are, right? I'm seeing this. Okay, so I see what's going on here. I see, so he's over there, is like, he's yes to me. He's like, and he's playing video games, right? So now I have to kind of reach at home and say, okay, got to turn that off. I need your attention here. So the comforts of home, certainly for some students, kind of made their way into in virtually. So it was a challenge, kind of from it was a challenge on both ends, as a teacher and as a student. Some students did really well, right? Like they were in their element. Okay, I don't have to walk down the hall. Perhaps some students who may have been victims of bullying, right? Maybe it's dealing with anxiety. Some of them really thrived at home, but and then the opposite has also happened, right? So, we are social, emotionally, just even academically, we're starting to see some of the repercussions or the effects of virtual hybrid learning. Is still going on. Obviously, COVID is not something of the past, but we are starting to see it. So what does that mean, in terms of an educator or a parent? I think if I were to say anything to any parent, any mom, dad, guardian, you are your child's biggest advocate. If you feel your child belongs in that advanced placement course, you are your child's biggest advocate. If you feel that there's some services or some supports, you are your child's biggest advocate. There's a saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. There's no shame in speaking up. I have seen, and I work in a particular district where I see it. I see parents who generally want the best, or they want, things for their child, and they speak up about it. Now, some issues are, okay, if you have a language barrier, if you might feel like sometimes culturally, how some families may view education or teachers, and feel like, okay, the school perhaps may know what's best, right? They may leave it up to the school to perhaps make the best decision for their child. Now, we have legal obligations to, reach out and identify students who may be in need, et cetera. But, whenever I see a parent advocating for their child, especially a Black, brown parent, I'm always very moved, because I don't often see that happening. Whether it's advocating for just some social emotional support in the building, which is free and accessible. I'm speaking because I work in a public school, right? That's available. But also I know parents whose children have not been recommended for certain advanced, more rigorous courses, and they spoke up about that. They advocated for, around the state, there's been some advocacy for some changes in terms of kind of the acceptance for people, students into some of these courses where it's often been kind of tracked, and certain groups of people have not been let into some of those classes. And we kind of know what happens there sometimes. But, as a parent, you are your child's biggest advocate. You have a voice, and that voice is a powerful tool. And during the pandemic, certainly many of our children, many of our students, it was a change for everybody. It was a change for everyone. And I think if you are seeing, at least at this point, even if you are a sibling or whatever your relationship may be, if you are seeing, if you're seeing anything, if your eyes are open and you're seeing something with, your child or whatever it might be, reach out, ask your questions, make demands be loud, you will be surprised what supports are there. But also, I encourage families to get their children involved in as many different things as possible as well, especially the arts.
Are you kidding me? I'm really surprised to hear that even to this day, 2022, we have Black and brown parents of Black and brown children still have that apathy towards being an advocate for their child. You hear so much over the years. I've heard so much of how Black and brown parents don't even show up for PTA, parent-teacher association meetings. They're not involved, and I get it. Parents don't feel that they're educated enough, or may feel embarrassed, and their child might know more than them, or whatever the reasons are. But I'm surprised, and I'm still surprised that even in this day and age, we still have that issue where parents aren't getting involved in their child's education. It still amazes me.
Yeah, it does. And just also another thing, sometimes those PTA meetings are not always accessible. If you are a parent who works multiple jobs, right? Yeah. So now you're saying, okay, the PTA meeting is Tuesday at 7 p.m. Oh, that's during my shift, right? Or that's during my second job. So now, how can that be a bit more accessible? Because I think that is the PTA is definitely a powerful tool. They have a voice. There's even funding that comes through these. But yes, that's the case. But there are definitely families and parents that do advocate and speak up, and that's awesome and beautiful to see. We need a lot more though.
How have you been able to mix visual arts and education with your production in Africa? And with the experience that you've had here in the West, middle school, and things like that, how does that all tie in that equation?
Yes. So right now, and we'll kind of get into me kind of delving into the visual arts I'll kind of jump into it a bit now. So during COVID did a lot of things for a lot of people. It definitely opened up some doors for many. So for me in particular, I remember teaching, and a lot of what was kind of circulating around many educational institutions, pre-K through 12th grade and, college as well, was just, the social emotional, right? Social emotional support, social emotional learning for our students, but also for ourselves as well, right? As educators, as practitioners, so I remember taking some professional development during 2020, and it was around mental health, right? Like mental health, like first aid for youth. And one of the things that I learned from that particular course was the importance of having a kind of a go-to self-care kit for myself, right? So the analogy that's often used is an emergency on an airplane, right? If you ever flown on an airplane, you're told to put on your mask first before you assist somebody else, right? When we are able to take care of ourselves and be in the right, frame, whether it's mentally or physically, we are more capable and more apt to be able to support and help others in need. And so part of my assignment for this class was to identify the things that I enjoyed that were outlets for me, whether it was physically, having some sort of financial goal, creatively, environmentally, whatever it is. And at the time I thought, okay, you know what? I used to write, used to do poetry. So maybe writing will be my thing. And I put that down and I tried it for a bit. And I was like, okay, but it wasn't catching the way I remembered it catching when I was younger. I have an iPad, and one day, I don't even know how it started. I just opened up an app on my iPad, Sketchbook or something like that. And I just started drawing. And I used to be artistic. I used to draw. I was like, oh, I'm enjoying this. And I started doing, I got excited to get back and create, right? I wasn't thinking about it as drawing. but creating, taking something from my mind and realizing it, actualizing it, putting it down, right? Like kind of breathing life into something. And that's when it hit. This is for me. I am a creator. And when I realized that, a lot of things changed. One, I started to just see, and I'm not trying to get spiritual, but I started to see my own divine being, right? So like, if you think of identity, like creation and, whatever, I'm not going to get religious, but whatever energy it is that created us is still part of us.
Indeed.
We are still creating magic and beauty and miracles, whether it's on a microphone, on a dance floor, with paint, digitally, with a pen. We are still creating whatever energy entity it was that created us, created something that creates. Right? And it wasn't until I started creating I understood elevation. I understood that my purpose is not just to do the 9 to 5, wake up. There was another portal of reality and existence that I was not aware of until that moment. And so that was the meal that I needed to keep me running 40 days, 40 nights, keep going. I'm still going on that meal, right? I'm not losing any energy from that. And I know it's a part of me because there are times when I feel something stirring and bubbling in me. And that stirring is a need to create. Right? I whether it's, if someone is, you with your loved one, you want to spend time, you desire to spend time with them, or you're hungry, something in you is telling you, I need this. I need to do this right now. I don't know how to explain it, except that happens to me. And if anyone who's listening to this, if you're a creative individual, you know what I'm talking about. We're vibing right now, right? You cannot go to sleep until that thing is out of you. Right? Until whatever that nebulous abstract thing or whatever it is, until it's created. And that's when I knew that was part of who I am. I've always been. So how have I brought visual art? So I'm not an art teacher, but so I've done a number of different things. So in my regular kind of day-to-day classroom, I'll try to incorporate some of my own visuals into some of the work, things I'm doing, whether it's, some digital assignments, I put something on the background. That's kind of a very low ball, like easy way to kind of incorporate visuals. But as a teacher, I know that, many students not every student learns the same way. Some students are auditory. Some people are just auditory learners. They can turn off the screen. They can just listen and process, and they receive information really well. That's a strength of theirs. Some are very visual. Some are kinesthetic, and they need the hands-on, right? So whenever I'm teaching, and what I ended up doing was also I had an opportunity, and I did a few webinars talking about NFTs, and I will kind of get into that. Absolutely. And I knew, when I was consuming a lot of information around NFTs, in the beginning, it was mostly visual, but eventually it kind of became a bit more auditory. And I knew that if I'm going to share what I've been learning, it has to be through multiple modalities, right? It can't just be one particular mode of instruction. So that's when I knew visuals were going to be really important in integrating that. So currently, I don't have a specific project in Africa, but through my work, my own personal creative work, I do bring my own identity and my own self and my own voice there. I've been able to connect with a lot of African artists and creators as well as some collectors. So a really solid network of creatives from Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and in the diaspora have been forming to also uplift other African creatives, not just having a platform, but even economically, through galleries around the States, around the world. There was an event, there've been events kind of going on kind of in the NFT space, from NFT NYC, NFT LA, South by Southwest. Even though that's not really an NFT space, we're starting to see NFTs integrate into a variety of different spaces. So, and in those spaces, we are definitely trying to uplift more African voices, more female voices and creatives, because they're dope. And I'll leave it at that. So visual arts, education, Africa, for me, have kind of come together in a really awesome way, where I can start to not just tap into a part of my identity as a creative, but my training as a teacher and my heritage as a Kenyan, as an African, and uplift.
Creation, baby, creation.
Yes.
That's powerful, bro.
Yes.
And to piggyback off that, I hate using that term piggyback, but to add to that, for me, when I have those moments of burst of creation, I found out that I'm restless. If I don't write it down, if I don't draw, I'm not an artist and drawer like that, but ideas that I have in regards to business, ideas that I have in productivity tools and stuff like that, it burdens me so much that I'm restless. I can't rest. But as soon as I'm able to, I got an idea. Oh, okay, I'm able to incorporate this part of it. All of a sudden, I feel a sense of rest and peace. Come on, and then I can relax and my appetite comes back and all that other stuff. But yeah, man, creation. We're born to create.
Yeah.
Like how?
No, that's what you're saying, brother. Like, I mean, creation is a part of humanity. I mean, we are created, therefore we create. It's just like that's what's in us, and we tap into it in different ways. Everybody. And I want to say here, fam, everybody. We all are artists in certain ways. Some people are artists in science. Some people are artists in technology. Some people are artists in language. So it just depends on what you choose to funnel your energy or creativity into, because life is creation. So who would not create? That's part of extension of who you are. So I just want to make the family know that, like, oh well, he's an artist, I'm not an artist. It's like, no, you creating your life, right? You creating the life you want, right? Hopefully that's the goal. So we are all creators, in that sense, man. And